A near miss from a 120 mm mortar shell jolts the dugout's log ceiling. Dry earth rains down from the cracks, dusting the spread-out staff map. The guard captain, a former high school algebra teacher, snaps his grease pencil with a dry crunch. The hard lead tears the paper right at the mark for a narrow mountain pass. October 1944. The Carpathians. The Soviet school of heavy self-propelled artillery produced lumbering steel monsters designed for one thing: the total destruction of heavy armor and concrete fortifications. The ISU-152 is 46 tons of massive steel. It has a high silhouette and abysmal visibility from within the cramped fighting compartment. On winding mountain switchbacks, the machine goes blind, stalls, and loses all maneuverability. Sending a beast killer into a solo ambush at the pass is a death sentence for the crew. The first shot gives away the position instantly. Once the trigger is pulled, the heavy SPG inevitably becomes a sitting duck for every gun in the enemy column. "They'll kill you, mathematician. They'll burn you to a crisp." The regimental commander leans heavily on the plank table, his weight crushing the edges of the map. There is no sympathy in his raspy voice, nor any attempt to talk him out of it. There is only the cold statement of a ruthless tactical fact. "The math is sound, Comrade Lieutenant Colonel. The elevation of the cliff will allow for a directed rock slide. They won't make it through this sector. One vehicle against an entire armored vanguard. You fire once and you're done. That thick frontal armor won't save you from concentrated crossfire. I need exactly one shot. Sign the order." The lieutenant colonel stares silently into the captain's hollow eyes. There hasn't been a thirst for glory or a desire for medals there for a long time. Instead, there is a gaping, mathematically precise void. A year ago, in the hell of Stalingrad, the captain's only son burned alive in a T-34. The endless war had scorched every human emotion out of the simple school teacher. All that remained were dry ballistic tables and the relentless physics of armor penetration, a blind hunger for the most efficient destruction of enemy manpower. Unbearable fatherly grief had been converted entirely into ballistic trajectories. Personal revenge had become cold calculation. The heavy order is placed on the table. The pen scratches against cheap paper. A one-way ticket is issued. Outside the flimsy dugout door, heavy diesel engines roar under the strain. The cold mountain air shudders. The tank core smells of spilled diesel, thick gun grease, and bodies that haven't been washed in weeks. The perfect geometric plan on the clean staff map collides with the filthy reality of the front. The loader sits on the SPG's ribbed armor, a broad-shouldered, sullen peasant. Today, he'll have to manhandle 43-kilogram high-explosive shells inside a red-hot iron box, his heavy boots slipping on spent brass. He slowly rubs his calloused palms. The machine's freezing metal burns his skin. "Did they clear it?" the loader rasps. A smoking cigarette butt flies into the deep, tread-crushed mud. "Start the engine. We're moving to the high ground," the captain says, kicking the thick armor with a muddy boot. "Copy that. We'll get it done." On paper, the mathematical plan looks like a flawless geometric figure, a perfect equation with predetermined variables. A firing position calculated down to the centimeter. The precise vector for a 152mm high-explosive shell. The instantaneous collapse of the overhanging rock shelf. Thousands of tons of mountain stone burying the enemy's armor. Paper is patient. The autumn Carpathians are not. Ambushing heavy armor in the mountains is an equation where every new variable tries to kill the crew. The V2IS engine spits thick blue-gray smoke. The screech of steel tracks drowns out the occasional shouts of passing infantry. The heavy treads savagely tear into the rocky soil, kicking up showers of bright sparks. The multi-ton SPG crawls slowly up the steep slope. Every meter of the climb pushes the worn-out transmission toward critical failure. The driver yanks the stiff steering levers toward him, acrid sweat pouring down his pale face. The exhausted machine groans under the strain. This isn't a victory march with a brass band. It is grueling, back-breaking labor, the absolute exhaustion of complex machinery and human sinew. The captain checks the time on a captured watch. Exactly 4 hours remain until the cold dawn. 4 hours to bury 46 tons of lumbering steel deep into the hard rock, to hide the massive, angular silhouette from enemy optics, to build a kill zone with their own hands. The price of a mistake is death in a searing fire. The separate loading process for the massive gun is agonizingly slow. There won't be a second chance for a ranging shot. Targeted return fire from German tanks will rip the cramped fighting compartment to shreds faster than the loader can ram a new shell into the open breach. A sharp jolt as the steel belly hits a hidden boulder tosses the crew violently. Unsecured heavy wrenches clang against the floor. "Keep the RPMs up," the captain yells over the deafening roar of the diesel. "If you blow the clutches, I'll shoot you myself." The driver grits his teeth, leaning harder into the stubborn control levers. Dark blood from a bitten lip trickles down his grimy chin. They are driving to kill. Ahead lies the black maw of the mountain pass. Behind them are kilometers of filthy, bloody war. Inside the cramped compartment, there is the monotonous hum of the powerful diesel and the distinct scent of approaching death. Mounting tension constricts their lungs. The geometry of the death trap takes on a real, physical form. The former math teacher is leading his crew to their final lesson. A heavy armor ambush rules out any magic of invisibility. You can't make 46 tons of angular armored steel vanish into a mountain landscape. The massive, boxy silhouette of the Soviet SPG looms stubbornly over the stunted Carpathian brush. The 12-cylinder V2IS diesel unit growls low at idle. Acrid blue-gray exhaust hugs the cold stones. The muffled thrum of the powerful engine carries for miles down the narrow gorge. The position has to be taken and prepared long before the German armored vanguard arrives. Otherwise, the straining roar of the engine will give away the death trap long before the enemy enters the kill zone. The driver cuts the fuel. The engine sputters and dies. A brief, ringing silence follows. It is immediately replaced by the heavy, ragged breathing of exhausted men and the sharp scrape of metal against stone. The crew spills out of the narrow hatches. The soldiers silently grab heavy steel crowbars and short entrenching shovels. There is no soft earth here. Only monolithic rock compressed over millennia and sharp, crumbling scree. Digging a reliable hull-down position for a combat vehicle nearly 3 meters high with only 4 exhausted men is a task far beyond the limits of human endurance. But they silently bite into the dead stone. The thin entrenching shovels bend after the very first strike. Only the heavy steel crowbars are of any use. Frequent strikes ring out loudly, sending tiny stone chips and angry yellow sparks flying in every direction. Trench truth is entirely devoid of cinematic romance. It is nothing but monotonous, grueling, back-breaking labor. The freezing night wind cuts right through faded tunics soaked with acrid sweat. "Take it further left," the commander rasps, leaning his full weight onto a thick crowbar. "We need a solid brace under the right track immediately. Otherwise, the gun's recoil will kick the vehicle right off the cliff." "It's solid rock here, Comrade Captain," the driver exhales heavily, wiping grimy sweat from his face. "The tip of the crowbar won't even bite. It's slipping." "Hit it harder. Hack through the stone." They strike ferociously. The skin on their palms is instantly covered in deep, bloody blisters. Calloused skin splits at the knuckles. Hot blood mixes with the grease embedded in the cracks of their skin and the thick mountain mud. Every jarring blow of the crowbar echoes with a dull, aching pain in their strained shoulders and spines. The loader swings with everything he has at the base of a large granite boulder. The dulled steel tip of the crowbar slides off the smooth surface with a piercing ring. The heavy iron bar, driven by uncontrollable momentum, flies downward. The blunt end strikes the loader right in the forearm with a sickening crunch. The man falls hard onto the sharp stones. A muffled, strangled groan is instantly swallowed by the darkness. By some miracle, the bone remains intact, but a massive hematoma immediately swells with leaden weight, robbing the arm of mobility. "Bandage it, quick!" the commander snaps, never stopping his methodical pounding of the stubborn stone. The loader tears open the casing of a grimy field dressing with his teeth. He tightly wraps the throbbing arm with a gray bandage. He stands up slowly and grips the heavy crowbar again. A savage pain now pulses rhythmically in time with his racing heart. There can be no break in the algorithm. Torn muscles are obligated to keep working. Inside the cramped fighting compartment, there is an incredibly thick stench of burnt diesel, hot metal, and sour human sweat. The commander sinks heavily into the gunner's hard seat. A small yellow dome light dimly illuminates the worn scale of the panoramic sight. The former math teacher pulls a crumpled sheet of paper from an old map case. The thick lead of a simple pencil quickly sketches out even rows of complex figures. He pedantically calculates the exact distance to the rock shelf overhanging the narrow road. He carefully accounts for the negative depression angle of the long barrel, the mandatory correction for drift, and the high humidity of the dense night air. The 152mm howitzer possesses devastating destructive power, but suffers from abysmal ballistics in rugged terrain. The heavy 43-kilogram shell travels along a very steep, high-angle parabola. The slightest error in calculation, even by tenths of a degree, is guaranteed to lead to a fatal catastrophe. The cast-iron HE shell will either pass slightly high, exploding uselessly in the empty night sky, or strike the monolithic base of the cliff, failing to trigger the necessary rock slide. The complex mathematical equation is ruthlessly reduced to a single critical variable. The crew has exactly one shot. Reloading the heavy, separate loading gun in the heat of battle takes nearly a full minute. Experienced German tankers will traverse their turrets much faster. If the first HE shell doesn't bring tons of mountain rock down on the moving column, the Soviet SPG physically won't have time for a second shot. The return fire of armor-piercing rounds will punch right through the vehicle's thick frontal armor. "Crew, mount up!" the captain barks. "We need to traverse the hull 3 degrees to the right. The gun barrel won't clear on horizontal lay." The exhausted men climb heavily into the stifling armored box. The powerful starter lets out a loud, straining wail as it cranks the heavy crankshaft. The cold diesel roars to life, spitting a pillar of bright flame from the exhaust ports. The monstrous roar echoes repeatedly off the sheer cliffs. The saving seconds of silence are torn to shreds. If enemy scouts are prowling below, they are guaranteed to hear this mechanical roar. The driver yanks the stiff right lever, and floors the master clutch. The left steel track clangs loudly. The right tread locks tight. The 46-ton beast pivots with great difficulty on the narrow ledge. The wide iron tracks crush the supporting stones with a sickening crunch. The bulky machine shifts to the required mathematical angle. The engine is cut immediately. A thick, ringing silence reigns in the steel compartment once more. The only distinct sound is the loud clicking of the cooling gunmetal in the piercing night cold. The loader, cradling his bruised limb with his good hand, clanks open the massive sliding wedge breech. The heavy metal part thuds against the steel stop. In the dim yellow light, the copper driving band of the heavy, high-explosive shell glints. With incredible strain and ragged breath, the loader shoves the 50-pound lethal cylinder deep into the bore. Then, with a sharp motion, he sends the thick brass casing with its full powder charge in after it. The steel wedge closes with a sharp metallic clang. The death trap is finally loaded. They sit silently in the pitch-black, freezing darkness. Less than an hour remains until the autumn dawn. The large stones under the iron tracks are crumbling treacherously. The supporting soil beneath the multi-ton machine is extremely unstable. The monstrous recoil from the powerful gun's discharge will inevitably and violently kick the massive weight backward. If the mathematical calculation for the ground brace is wrong, the heavy SPG will simply plummet off the sheer cliff. The math teacher knows this fatal risk perfectly well. Dry science takes no account of the accumulated fatigue of old metal or the natural fragility of mountain rock. The mountain cold seeps unhindered through the thick steel armor. The crew freezes in tense immobility. Any careless or sudden movement immediately triggers a sharp, cutting pain in hands worn down to raw meat. The endless war has long since erased their past civilian lives. Now, they are merely living biological appendages to a steel breech, an optical sight, and stiff control levers. Replaceable parts of a single mechanism of destruction, frozen in grim anticipation of its primary target. The long night retreats agonizingly slowly. The high sky over the eastern mountain range gradually fills with a pale, deathly gray light. Deep below, in the thick, impenetrable fog, the winding gorge still guards its secrets. But the sharp wind is already shifting direction. It brings a faint but distinct rhythmic sound from below. The clinking metallic clatter of dry track pins and the straining, steady drone of powerful German gasoline engines. The armored enemy vanguard is slowly pulling into the narrow stone maw of the pass. The cold geometry of the trap is fully prepared to undergo its ultimate test in hot blood. Dawn cuts through the mountain gorge like cold gray steel. The Carpathian fog crawls slowly over the sharp stones, exposing the wet rock. The silence physically presses against their eardrums. Metal clanks below. The rhythmic screech of dry track pins tears through the morning quiet. The German column pulls into the narrow stone throat of the pass. The enemy armored vanguard moves in tight formation. The gray boxes of the tanks crawl confidently along the broken, rocky road, leaving a thick, blue-gray trail of exhaust in their wake. The captain presses his right eye hard against the rubber eyepiece of the panoramic sight. The optical crosshairs aren't looking for enemy armor. They are dead set on the vulnerable base of the overhanging rock shelf. The distance to the target is mathematically calculated to the meter. Harsh science tolerates no human emotion. Here, only cold ballistic calculation reigns. The elevation of the long gun barrel is locked tight by the stopping mechanisms. The bubble of the lateral level is frozen exactly between the control marks. The commander's fingers grip the cold metal of the trigger. Fire, the captain rasps. Pulling the trigger closes the electrical circuit. The heavy steel firing pin strikes the primer with force. Inside the massive breech, the full powder charge ignites. Flame instantly erupts within the cramped, armored compartment. A 152mm howitzer blast in the mountains is a devastating local earthquake. The powerful shockwave slams into the crew's ears, deafening them instantly. Eardrums are painfully driven inward. The air in the cramped compartment is sucked out in a flash. The monstrous force of the recoil savagely hurls the 46-ton machine backward. The worn metal of the hull shrieks under the stress. The wide iron tracks screech piercingly, gouging deep furrows into the rocky ground. The massive steel beast sags heavily on its rear rollers. The powerful torsion bars twist to their breaking point. By some miracle, the heavy SPG holds on the edge of the sheer cliff. The crumbling earth beneath the tracks gives way treacherously. The massive muzzle brake violently vents the white-hot powder gases to the sides. A firestorm lashes out at the dry, rocky slope. An ultra-dense cloud of gray dust and gravel instantly surges into the air. The size of the debris cloud is comparable to a large house. Camouflage no longer exists. The stealth of the ambush is destroyed by the very first pull of the trigger. The thick silhouette of the Soviet machine stands out clearly against the brightening sky. The SPG is fully exposed. The lethal 43-kilogram high-explosive shell streaks through the morning air. It strikes the calculated point exactly. Hard steel slams into monolithic rock. The fuse triggers in thousandths of a second. The deafening roar of the explosion drowns out the howl of the tank engines. The basalt cliff snaps along its natural seams with a dry crack. Thousands of fissures rapidly tear through the stone. A massive chunk of the mountain breaks away from its base with a low rumble. Thousands of tons of granite collapse inevitably downward. The lethal rock avalanche quickly gains speed. Sharp rock fragments the size of trucks slam into the armor with incredible force. The tail end of the column vanishes instantly beneath the waterfall of stone. German armor buckles and tears. Mangled metal snaps with a screech. Full fuel tanks explode. Thick, black flames erupt from beneath the rubble. The narrow mountain road is blocked for good. The enemy has no way back. But the ballistic calculation fails. The equation breaks against a natural fluke. The front section of the rock shelf did not collapse entirely. Hidden rock held the right edge of the overhang from falling. The armored vanguard manages to clear the main impact zone. 3 medium tanks and 1 heavy vehicle remain completely unscathed. They are cut off from their main force by a wall of stone, trapped in a tight pocket. But their frontal armor is intact. Their rifled guns are loaded. The enemy is not destroyed. The enemy is deathly enraged. "The cliff didn't all go," the commander rasps furiously into his throat mic. He spits thick blood onto the floor of the compartment. The capillaries in his nose have burst from the sudden pressure drop. A continuous, high-pitched ringing fills the crew's ears. The acoustic concussion drowns out all external sounds, turning reality into a silent movie. The corrosive smell of burnt powder stings their nostrils. Below, the gears of the turret mechanisms clank rapidly. The long barrels of the German guns traverse hungrily upward. Enemy optics instantly lock onto the settling dust cloud on the slope. The situation changes in a matter of seconds. The kill zone is formed, but the vanguard is unharmed. And their guns are already staring right at the Soviet machine. "Armor piercing! Load it, now!" the captain screams frantically. His voice breaks into a painful wheeze. The loader can't hear the command through the veil of ringing, but reflexes trained to the point of automation work faster than a concussed mind. He lunges toward the heavy ammo racks on the side. His fingers claw at the cold metal. The distance is closing rapidly. Time compresses into a single point of pain. Ahead, nothing remains but the raw strength of the crew and the thickness of the frontal armor. The enemy strikes back. The first German shell streaks through the air over the commander's cupola with a howl. A deafening crack tears through the morning sky. The enemy HE shell shears off a chunk of rock behind the heavy machine's rear. A hail of stones slams into the Soviet SPG's steel roof with a monstrous roar. Heavy granite boulders clang loudly against the armor. The weld seams groan under the strain. Inside the cramped compartment, a literal, suffocating hell begins. The temperature climbs rapidly. The red-hot breech of the massive gun radiates an unbearable, searing heat. Inside the enclosed space, it's over 100 degrees. Thick powder gases instantly devour the remaining oxygen. The fans helplessly circulate acrid, toxic smoke in circles. There is absolutely nothing to breathe. Lungs burn with a dry fire with every desperate gasp. The separate loading process for the heavy 152mm howitzer becomes a death sentence. The massive machine's rate of fire is only 2 rounds per minute. 2 long, agonizing minutes for every full reload cycle. In that same time, the German tankers can fire 5 or 6 aimed shots. Time is working against the Soviet crew. "Range 400, left 002, the commander bellows hoarsely. His voice breaks into a raspy cough. He tries desperately to shout over the wild roar of shrapnel hitting the frontal armor. The sight optics are choked with stone dust. "Armor piercing! Give it to me! Now!" The former math teacher is utterly powerless. Perfect mathematical formulas are rapidly incinerated in the acidic powder haze. The survival of the entire crew now depends solely on the raw physical strength of one single man. The loader is working at the absolute limit of human physiology. His heart hammers wildly against his ribs. A thick pulse thumps in his temples. Blood pounds in his ears. This is the edge of a massive heart attack. Broad peasant hands grip the cold steel of the ammo rack. 43 kilograms of dead weight. With a violent jerk, the loader wrenches the heavy shell from its steel clamps. His back muscles crunch piteously under the unbearable weight. Tendons stretch to their breaking point. He takes the first short step toward the open breach. His foot slips treacherously. The metal floor of the fighting compartment is thick with spent brass casings. They roll unpredictably under heavy soldier boots. The loader suddenly loses his balance. The heavy steel slug inexorably drags his exhausted body down. He falls hard, chest first, right onto the red-hot breech. The sharp edge of the hot metal tears through his soaked tunic. The white-hot steel burns his skin down to the raw meat. The loader groans dully, but he does not let go of the lethal shell in his battered hands. "Faster!" the driver screams in a panic. "I've got it!" the loader rasps. The searing pain snaps him back to reality instantly. He gathers the last of his strength. With a low grunt, he shoves the 95-pound shell deep into the bore. Metal screeches against metal. Immediately behind it, a 36-pound brass casing with a full powder charge flies into the chamber. The sliding wedge breech slams shut with a heavy clang, his fingers barely clearing the steel in time. "Ready! Fire!" The self-propelled gun shudders violently under the force of another monstrous blast. The weapon's powerful recoil hurls the loader against the vehicle's armored side. The stench of burnt propellant becomes unbearable, and his eyes water heavily from the acrid smoke. Thick blood from a bitten lip smears across his grime-streaked chin. The German tanks aren't sitting still. The enemy maneuvers skillfully among the burning hulks of destroyed trucks. Experienced crews seek out the safety of dead zones behind massive boulders. Turrets traverse with cold confidence. An enemy gunner takes a precise lead for wind and range. Another tungsten armor-piercing core screams through the air and slams directly into the SPG's thick gun mantlet. A terrifying impact shakes the multi-ton Soviet machine from stem to stern. A hail of lethal, white-hot spall shears off the ceiling of the fighting compartment. The sharp metal spray savagely lacerates the crew's unprotected faces. The commander instinctively covers his eyes with filthy hands as thin streams of hot blood trickle through his trembling fingers. The thick glass of the vision blocks spiderwebs instantly into a dense, impenetrable network of fine cracks. The panoramic view narrows to a critical minimum. "I can't see the target. Driver, back us up. Get us out of the line of fire," the commander screams frantically. "The tracks are grinding on rock. No traction," the driver replies in desperation, yanking the stiff steering levers. The heavy machine slides helplessly, its wide steel tracks churning against the crumbling shale. A shower of yellow sparks erupts from beneath the road wheels. There is nowhere left to retreat. Behind them yawns a sheer precipice. Ahead, the surviving German tanks methodically spit fire. The bloody machinery of death is running at full throttle. The loader reaches for the ammo racks again, stubborn as ever. The next HE shell feels twice as heavy as the last. His final reserves of strength are draining rapidly from his exhausted body, and his hands shake violently from the physical strain. Acute oxygen deprivation clouds his mind. Dark, pulsing circles swim before his inflamed eyes. He fumbles for a shell with palms slick from blood and sweat, but his tired fingers give way. The shell falls back into its metal cradle with a dull thud. "Load it, goddammit!" the commander shrieks hysterically. "They're zeroing in!" Another hard strike against the armor. This time, a German high-explosive shell detonates right on the sloped glacis plate. A massive concussion washes over the crew like a heavy lead wave. The high-pitched ringing in their ears sharpens into an unbearable ultrasonic whine. The loader shakes his heavy head and spits thick blood onto the casings. Rage completely displaces animal fear and muscle fatigue. A primal fury floods his clouded consciousness. He lunges for the cursed iron again, jerking it toward himself. The muscles in his abdomen seize in a painful cramp. A step forward. Another step. A spent casing slides under his boot heel, but he keeps his balance by some miracle. He furiously rams the heavy shell into the breech and hurls the powder charge in after it. He slaps the lever. The breech block closes. Every movement is a small physical death. The absolute victory of human flesh over soulless iron. "On the way!" the loader rasps hoarsely, falling helplessly onto the hot metal floor. The gun thunders again. A pillar of bright flame roars out of the muzzle brake. Another German tank erupts into a blinding torch within a cloud of dust. But the remaining armored vehicles continue to methodically shell the stationary target on the cliffside. The German turrets turn with the inevitability of a lethal clockwork mechanism. Gray powder smoke crawls in ragged patches along the rocky slope. A wide, heavy silhouette emerges through the thick haze. A German Tiger rolls confidently from behind the burning wreck of an army truck. 54 tons of Krupp steel. An experienced, cold-blooded vanguard crew. The long barrel of the 88mm gun lowers smoothly. The turret stops rotating with a soft, metallic click. The enemy gunner quickly catches the massive casemate of the Soviet SPG in the crosshairs of his high-precision sight. The distance is closing to a critical minimum. Missing from this range is impossible. The flash of muzzle flame precedes the sound of the shot. The heavy tungsten penetrator howls through the air and strikes the thick, sloped glacis plate of the Soviet machine. A direct hit. Kinetic energy of incredible power slams into 46 tons of armored steel. The SPG jerks convulsively on the scarred rock. A monstrous metal screech tears at the crew's eardrums as the weld seams groan under the extreme stress. The thick frontal armor holds, preventing a full penetration, but inside the cramped fighting compartment, hell breaks loose. From the colossal pressure drop and the energy of the impact, the inner layer of the armor plate shatters. Razor-sharp spall screams through the enclosed space. Red-hot metal spray acts like lethal shrapnel, shredding the driver's face. His skin splits instantly, and hot blood floods his eyes. The man screams, a terrible, hacking sound, and lets go of the stiff control levers. Bloodied palms grab frantically at his mutilated face as the blinded driver thrashes in his seat in a fit of unbearable pain. The commander is hurled backward, the back of his head hitting the steel wall with a dull thud. A heavy concussion blankets his consciousness like a lead shroud. The perfect mathematical plan for retribution collapses in an instant. Cold, analytical calculation burns away in primal fear. Savage pain paralyzes his exhausted body. A steady, dead ringing fills his head, and dark circles swim before his eyes. Vengeance is gone, replaced by the sticky horror of approaching death. "The gun!" the commander rasps wildly. His voice breaks into a strained, bloody cough, his throat choked with acrid soot. He no longer thinks about impact angles or trajectories. Reflexes trained to total automation take control of his disobedient body. Muscle memory forces him to act. The loader's boots slip on the spent brass casings as he falls to his bruised knees. He breathes greedily through an open mouth, dark blood soaking his chin from a broken nose. He reaches blindly for the side ammo rack, his hand clamping onto the cold metal. 95 pounds of high-explosive fragmentation shell pull relentlessly toward the floor. The muscles in his back groan under the weight. With a low, beastly roar, the loader tears the lethal cylinder from its mounts. A short step. Another heavy step. With incredible force, he drives the shell into the open maw of the glowing breech. "Give me the charge!" the gunner screams frantically. A short, sharp jerk. A massive brass casing with a full powder charge flies into the chamber. The heavy steel breech block slams shut with a loud clang. The trap is set once more. The former math teacher leans his full weight against the rubber eyepiece of the panoramic sight. The thick glass is spiderwebbed with cracks, the image shaking and blurring badly. Right in the center of the shattered lens looms the boxy shape of the tiger. At this very moment, the German loader is surely ramming a new shell into the breech. The Soviet crew has only seconds before the next killing blow. The battered frontal armor will not survive a second direct strike. The commander's fingers frantically grip the iron handles of the laying mechanisms. The hand wheels spin with frantic speed. The long barrel of the 152mm howitzer shifts by decisive fractions of a degree. The black crosshairs settle precisely at the vulnerable junction of the enemy's turret ring. "Fire!" A grime-stained hand slams the firing lever. The battered SPG recoils violently. A pillar of fire roars out of the muzzle brake. The heavy HE shell streaks through the dusty air of the gorge and strikes exactly at the seam between the hull and the turret of the German heavy tank. An explosion of incredible destructive power shakes the mountains. 95 pounds of steel and high explosives do their work. The thick German armor snaps along its weld seams with a dry crack. Monstrous internal pressure shears the multi-ton turret off the ring, tossing the mangled mass of steel onto the rocks with a deafening crash. A pillar of orange flame erupts from the open hull as the enemy's ammunition load detonates. A heavy, ringing silence hangs in the Soviet machine, broken only by the muffled, gurgling moans of the blinded driver. The crew is bleeding out. The SPG is mutilated. Complex mathematics no longer works here. Survival has been paid for with torn metal and mangled flesh. The captain slowly wipes his face with a wet sleeve. The red haze before his eyes refuses to clear. The struggle for life continues. Ahead, the surviving enemy machines are still smoking. The fight is entering a stage of absolute physical exhaustion. Heavy smoke drifts along the scarred mountain switchback. The German attack finally founders in blood and crushed granite. The remaining enemy tanks abruptly cease fire as their commander assesses the catastrophic losses. 3 German medium tanks have turned into blazing steel tombs, their ruptured hulls smoking with toxic fumes. 4 more heavy vehicles are buried under thousands of tons of fallen rock. The stone trap has bottled up the column. The armored vanguard is shattered. Worn clutches creak and overloaded transmissions howl as the surviving German tanks back away. The veteran crews retreat skillfully behind the turn of the narrow gorge, their tracks indifferently crushing abandoned gear and rock fragments. The enemy machines disappear behind the cliffside, the sound of their engines slowly dissolving into the mountain air. This is no triumphal victory from a propaganda poster. The enemy is not destroyed. They are conducting a cold, calculated tactical withdrawal. Harsh pragmatism dictates the abandonment of a senseless frontal assault. The battle is over. Inside the Soviet SPG, a suffocating silence is punctured by the crackle of a short circuit.
A red-hot piece of spall has pierced the electrical box, and the insulation on the damaged copper wires begins to melt. Bright blue sparks shower onto the metal floor with a loud hiss. Acrid chemical smoke fills the compartment. A fire is starting. "We're burning! The wiring!" the loader rasps wildly. With great effort, he rolls over the glowing breach. His bloodied hands tear a heavy CO2 fire extinguisher from its mounts. The red canister slips from his sweaty palms as he falls to his knees. He strikes the brass valve with a filthy palm, and a stream of white foam hits the smoldering cables with a sharp hiss. The foam bubbles on the hot metal. Toxic carbon monoxide finally displaces the last of the oxygen. The temperature inside exceeds all tolerable limits. The exhausted men suffocate, their lungs burning with a dry internal fire. "The hatches! Kick the hatches open!" the former math teacher commands hoarsely. Weak, trembling fingers beat desperately against the steel latches. The metal refuses to budge. The armor, warped by kinetic impacts, has jammed the mechanisms tight. With a primal howl, the loader grabs a massive wrench and slams it against the latch handle. Sparks fly. The lock snaps back with a metallic click, and the 64-pound hatch cover clangs open. The icy autumn air of the mountain pass rushes in with a roar. The extreme temperature contrast hits their lungs like a sledgehammer. In blind panic, the crew abandons the iron cage. The commander pulls himself up on weakened arms and struggles over the edge, falling onto the sharp rocks with a dull thud. His body no longer obeys him. With a strained rasp, the loader drags the moaning driver out by the collar. The blinded driver frantically claws at the cold metal of the track with bloodied fingers, leaving long, wet, red streaks on the gray steel. The reality of the front knows nothing of the heroic poses found in propaganda. A brutal physiological reckoning begins. The captain retches, vomiting acrid bile and dark clots of blood onto the gray moss. His stomach turns inside out from powder gas poisoning, and every convulsion echoes with sharp pain in his concussed head. The loader falls onto his back, his chest heaving as he gulps the icy air. A violent tremor racks his body. His nervous system has reached its breaking point. This is not a triumph. It is the absolute exhaustion of the human organism. The battered Soviet machine looms over the prone men like a silent reproach. 46 tons of alloyed steel took the full fury of the German guns. The frontal armor is hideously mutilated, yawning with jagged craters from armor-piercing slugs. The metal in these spots has taken on a bluish tint from the thermal impact. The factory weld seams have burst, exposing uneven, sharp edges. The right fender has been sheared away completely, a piece of checkered iron hanging by a single, deformed bolt. The spare tracks on the glacis are smashed into fragments. The glass blocks of the vision ports have crumbled, and the optical instruments are destroyed. The SPG is blind. The massive muzzle brake is coated in black soot, and a thin wisp of smoke curls from the hot barrel. Transmission oil drips from beneath the road wheels, mixing with stone dust to form viscous puddles. The captain rolls onto his side with great effort, pressing his pulsing cheek against the cold stone. His left ear is deaf. His right registers only a high-pitched whistle from a ruptured eardrum. He looks with a dull gaze at the driver's blood-covered face. The wounded soldier's moans merge with the whistle of the wind. The loader, with trembling hands, tries to open a first aid kit, his fingers slipping off the coarse canvas straps. Military victory has no taste. It has only the smell of burnt flesh, sour sweat, and melted copper. Filthy, exhausted men lie motionless by the shattered tracks of their wounded monster. They simply lie there and breathe. Every breath is a struggle. Muscles seized by cramps refuse to obey. The machinery of industrial death has stopped for a brief tactical pause. The metal survived by a miracle. The men survived. But a part of their souls has burned away forever in the furnace of this morning's battle. Thick smoke rises from the bottom of the stone gorge where the German armor burns. The former math teacher stands at the edge of the granite precipice, leaning on the trunk of a pine tree snapped by a shell fragment. His uniform is soaked with blood, sweat, and diesel. The nauseating smell of burnt flesh rises with the smoke. The cold wind brings a series of dull pops from below, the remaining HE ammunition detonating inside the glowing hulls. The mathematical equation is solved. The ballistic problem was executed with precision. A massive weight of iron and explosives collapsed upon the enemy at the calculated time. The geometry of the trap worked. The commander looks at the burning tanks with a hollow gaze. There, among the melted metal and cracked basalt, other people's sons are burning to ashes. They are burning exactly the same way his only son, Alexei, burned to death a year ago in a tank on the outskirts of Stalingrad. The harsh logic of war demanded vengeance, and the mechanism of retribution worked flawlessly. The enemy is destroyed. The objective is achieved. But there is no triumph. No relief comes. Instead of a sense of duty fulfilled, a crushing, leaden emptiness fills his chest. The cold wind blows the last remnants of emotion out of his hollowed soul. The death of dozens of strangers does not bring his child back. Glowing metal cannot compensate for such a loss. Mathematics is powerless here. The sum of this bloody equation is absolute zero. The enemies remain charred meat. Alexei remains dead. "Comrade Captain," the exhausted loader rasps from behind. "Any water left?" The commander slowly turns his heavy head. The truth of the trenches is devoid of lofty meaning. No hymns are sung here. There is only an unbearably parched throat, sticky blood on torn skin, and a primal desire for a sip of water and the mercy of silence. The driver moans hackingly by the ruptured track. His face is a continuous bleeding wound, with steel spall embedded deep in the flesh. The loader, with shaking hands, clumsily winds a stiff bandage around his comrade's head. The fabric, soaked in grease, instantly turns dark red. The driver jerks from the piercing pain. The loader tightens the knots. "Tough it out, your skull's intact," the loader says dryly. "My eyes, I can't see a damn thing," the driver bubbles through bloody foam. "It burns so goddamn much." "Tough it out. Shut up and tough it out." The captain drops his gaze to his own hands. A large, uncontrollable tremor racks his wrists. His nervous system has burned out in the fire trap of the ambush. The physiological crash following the surge of combat adrenaline breaks his body, and his concussed brain has lost control over his muscles. He reaches into the torn pocket of his tunic and pulls out a crumpled pack of cheap cigarettes, the paper stained with blood and soot. He tries to pull out a single cigarette, but his trembling fingers refuse to obey. The slick pack slips from his hands, the white paper tubes scattering across the sharp stones. The captain sinks to his bruised knees. Agonizingly slow, he begins to gather the scattered tobacco. Every tiny movement requires incredible effort. Finally, he clamps one of them firmly between his battered, bleeding lips. He fishes out a half-empty box of matches. He tries to strike one, but the thin wooden stick snaps instantly. He pulls a second. The dry sulfur crumbles uselessly against the sweat-soaked cardboard. His hands are locked in a violent tremor. The third match finally flares with a hiss, casting a dull yellow glow. The captain brings the weak flame toward his pale face, but the shaking is so uncontrollable that the fire misses the tip of his cigarette and stings his filthy fingers. He curses softly, helplessly, through gritted teeth, before angrily tossing the useless box onto the rocks. The true price of a human life in this moment is measured in these long seconds of absolute physical impotence. The grand plan for bloody vengeance shatters against the mundane impossibility of lighting a smoke. The perfect mathematical mechanism of mass murder breaks against the simple physiology of a nervous breakdown. The enemy is dead, but the victor is hollowed out. The commander sits motionless on the cold, stony ground, staring blankly at the jagged line of broken pines. In his shell-shocked ears, the terrifying, continuous roar of cannon fire still rings. "Let me help, Cap," the loader says, his voice raspy and worn thin. He approaches slowly, his movements heavy. His hands are also trembling from overexertion, but he firmly grips the captain's wrists with his massive, calloused palms, locking them into position.
The loader strikes his own match and brings a steady flame to the commander's face. The captain takes a deep, ragged drag of the acrid blue tobacco smoke. The bitter heat sears his damaged lungs, and a spasmodic cough immediately tears through his chest. He spits a dark clot of blood onto the gray stone. "Thanks," the commander rasps hoarsely. "We need to find fresh water, fast." A fragment punched through the copper radiator. "All the canteens are dry," the loader reports curtly, grimly surveying the mangled, multi-ton machine. Brutal survival dictates its own harsh, uncompromising laws. The past is gone. The future doesn't exist yet. There is only the frozen present. A wrecked 46-ton steel beast, a blinded driver bleeding out, and a total lack of clean drinking water. All heroic, patriotic illusions have burned away, along with the tungsten core rounds.
The psychology of endless war is bone simple and unbearably cruel. The agonizing death of the enemy brings no relief, only a brief physical respite before the next inevitable battle. The captain nods silently. Leaning against a tree trunk, he slowly pushes himself up onto stiff legs, his worn joints popping painfully. He takes the first heavy step back toward the battered steel hulk of the heavy assault gun. The dead remain below forever in the smoking mountain gorge. The living must get back to work. Long-awaited revenge proved to be a hollow illusion. Merciless war remained the objective reality. A heavy, incredibly filthy, bloody job that someone has to do day in and day out. Without joy, without triumph, without the slightest hope for quick healing. The broken men return dejectedly to their broken machine. The wide steel tracks shriek piercingly. The mangled 46-ton assault gun crawls agonizingly slow along the ruined rear-line dirt road. The shredded edges of the left track belt are haphazardly lashed together with thick wire and spare steel pins. The heavy war machine lists heavily to its damaged side, the right fender dragging through the deep, viscous mud and leaving a wide, jagged furrow behind. The worn diesel engine chokes, its valves hammering as it spits thick black smoke. Inside the cramped, armored casemate, deafened, utterly exhausted men lie in a heap. The blinded driver drifts in and out of consciousness from the savage pain. The broad-shouldered loader hauls on the stiff control levers in his stead with incredible strength, steering blindly, guided only by the raspy curses of the shell-shocked commander. This journey back from the pass lasts an eternity. Every rotation of the battered road wheels vibrates as a dull ache through their wounded bodies. The iron monster crawls into the temporary bivouac of the artillery regiment with a loud clang. The monstrous screech of twisted metal deafens the rear echelon soldiers scurrying about.
The heavy assault gun grinds to a halt near a large HQ tent, the engine dying with a sharp metallic thud. An unnatural, deafening silence falls. The former high school math teacher hauls himself over the edge of the soot-stained armor with immense effort and jumps heavily onto the sodden autumn earth. His weak legs buckle instantly. He instinctively claws at the jagged edge of the punctured frontal plate with filthy, blood-stained hands. His face is a solid black crust of dried blood, cordite soot, and acrid grease. His faded tunic is torn at the elbows, and his right shoulder hangs unnaturally after a terrifying impact against the breech. The captain flings back the heavy, wet canvas flap. Inside the spacious tent, it is dry, surprisingly warm, and smells of hot, sweet tea. Clean topographic maps are laid out with extreme precision on smooth wooden tables.
A staff major in a crisp, clean uniform pedantically fills in the neat columns of the war diary. No mysticism, no legendary epic of great heroes, only the dry, soulless clerical statistics of an endless bloodbath. Here, war is transformed into orderly columns of mathematical data. The major looks up from his papers with tired eyes, wincing involuntarily at the sharp, nauseating stench of burnt metal, sour sweat, and clotted human blood that has burst unceremoniously into the clean tent. "Mission accomplished," the captain rasps hoarsely. His voice breaks into a wet, wheezing cough. He swallows thick, bloody saliva with great effort. "Enemy armored column halted. 3 units of heavy enemy armor destroyed. The narrow mountain pass is securely blocked by a triggered rock slide. Further advancement is impossible." The major nods with pedantic satisfaction. A thin steel nib scratches quickly across the thick, rough paper. Dry, unambiguous figures are immediately entered into the proper columns of the report. The collision of the hell he just lived through with this clerical mundanity breaks the psyche more than enemy high-explosive shells. "Do you have visual confirmation of the kills?" the staff officer asks dryly, without looking up. "Regimental recon can go and check." The captain spits a thick, dark glob directly onto the clean wooden floor. "My driver is blind. The main gun is damaged. The machine barely made it back." "Your choice of firing position was exceptionally professional. The geometry of the ambush was calculated correctly. We will certainly note this in the commendation report." "I don't give a damn about the report. I need a doctor. Now." The major carefully dabs the fresh blue ink with a piece of blotting paper. He looks at the staggering captain with indifference and the hint of irritation. The insurmountable distance between the filthy hell of the trenches and the clean paper front is vast. No one died here this morning. People didn't suffocate here in the acrid, toxic smoke of burning copper wiring. They didn't dig shards of red-hot steel out of burst human eyes here. The duty physician is at the medical battalion. First, you must immediately fill out an official statement. "What kind of goddamn statement?" The captain strains his ruptured eardrums to the limit, trying to make out the words through the continuous, piercing ringing in his head. "An explanatory note. The reason for the partial loss of combat effectiveness of the heavy equipment entrusted to you. Government property has sustained critical damage. The thick frontal armor is severely deformed. Expensive optical periscopes are shattered. State property was damaged in the course of battle. Write a detailed report for the regimental commander." A dull, dark rage boils in the captain's inflamed brain. The animal instinct for survival, which had just miraculously saved him from German armor-piercing shells, now imperiously demands he kill this clean, calm man with the fountain pen. The commander's trembling hand moves instinctively toward the heavy holster of his service pistol. His bloodied fingers lock onto the worn leather grip. This is a direct path to a court-martial. One sudden movement, and a firing squad is guaranteed. The air in the tent thickens instantly. The major freezes, finally noticing the terrifying, hollow stare of the filthy artilleryman. In those bloodshot eyes, there isn't a single drop of military subordination. Only the cold mathematics of a guaranteed kill. "Go to hell, clerk," the captain growls, low and animalistic. He slowly, with a massive effort of will, unclenches his numb fingers and releases the holster flap. A court-martial means nothing now. This entire bureaucratic machine evokes only a dull, nauseating contempt. The captain turns heavily on stiff legs and staggers out of the warm HQ tent back into the freezing autumn mud of the Carpathians.
The mangled 46-ton machine cools gloomily under a light, icy rain. The sullen loader gently helps the moaning driver into the open bed of a passing medical truck. The paper front always lives by its own sterile laws, but the real war requires the urgent repair of shattered iron and the treatment of people torn to shreds. Awards and medals exist only in beautiful staff reports and an uncertain, distant future. The present smells of burnt metal, bleach, and stagnant blood. The mangled assault gun is towed to the field repair point, worn tractors roaring as they tear through the deep mud. The endless war doesn't grant a single minute for reflection on the feat performed. The victory at the mountain pass was only a brief, blinding flash in a succession of gray, filthy, and unbearably hard days. War is a giant conveyor belt for the production of mass death. The surviving workers of this factory must immediately return to their machines. The former math teacher is rushed to the medical battalion.
The severe concussion and ruptured eardrums rule out combat for the weeks ahead. The blinded driver screams horribly from savage pain on the field surgeon's table. But their places at the mechanisms of destruction cannot remain empty for long. A completely unknown, somber lieutenant climbs into the cramped, soot-stained casemate, wincing at the suffocating stench inside. "I'm taking command," the new officer snaps dryly, inspecting the mangled breech of the massive gun. "Why is there so much blood in here? Wash the armor down, now. We move out to a new firing line at dawn." "There's no clean water, Lieutenant," the exhausted loader rasps. "Find some. Scoop it out of a puddle for all I care. I need a clean war machine, not a slaughterhouse." The loader climbs down to the wet ground. He takes a battered, rusty bucket and collects icy water from a shell crater. The water is murky with floating soot. He tears his spare undershirt into rags and returns to the scorching steel box. He drops to knees worn to raw meat and begins the monotonous, disgusting job of scrubbing the driver's sticky blood off the levers and the ribbed floor. The clotted blood has bonded to the steel. The wet cloth screeches as it slides over the metal, and the water quickly turns red. The loader methodically wrings the filthy rag over the side of the hull. No grief, no tears, only a dull, aching pain in his muscles and the mechanical performance of routine. Nearby, regimental mechanics hammer furiously at the bent fender. A deafening metallic clanging rings through the camp. The mangled iron seats back into place with a nasty screech. Gas torches spark, the blue flame permanently fusing the seams burst by shells. The repair crew works fast, angrily, and ruthlessly. The multi-layered curses of the technicians drown out the steady hum of the generators. "Clean that barrel, fast," the foreman screams. "The carbon inside is an inch thick."
Tomorrow a new shell will get stuck in the bore. A heavy sectional ramrod is assembled from thick steel pipes. 4 exhausted soldiers drive the tool deep into the bore of the 152mm howitzer. Metal strikes dry metal with a horrific screech. Acrid soot falls in greasy flakes from the open breech directly onto the washed floor. The loader curses through gritted teeth and picks up his wet rag again. They push the heavy ramrod forward and back dozens of times, a physical effort that burns the last remnants of their strength. Every movement is met with a cutting pain in the bloody blisters on their palms. The cleaning is finally finished, and the most critical stage begins. An army truck pulls up tight against the side of the assault gun. Heavy wooden crates thud against the armor. A new combat load must be taken on immediately. 95 pounds of dead steel weight in every unit. Each high-explosive shell must be lifted to a man's height, heaved over the side, and laid with extreme care into the cramped racks.
The loader works in tandem with the new driver, a young, buzz-cut kid whose arms tremble from the unaccustomed weight. "Don't drop it, rookie," the loader rasps viciously, catching a slippery, cold shell. "Damage the fuse, and we'll all go up." "They're very heavy," the young soldier justifies himself guiltily. "Tomorrow in battle, they'll be twice as heavy. Load faster. We still have the propellant charges to go." The monotonous clang of iron continues deep into the cold night. The heavy brass casings seat neatly into their nests. The supply of lethal cargo is fully restored. The conveyor is ready for the next shift. The endless war tolerates no pauses. No one here remembers the burnt German tanks in the mountain gorge anymore. That mathematical problem has already been filed away. Tomorrow will be a new day and new armored targets. Exhausted, the loader collapses onto a pile of stiff canvas near the warm radiator. He closes his inflamed eyes, desperately needing to sleep for at least 3 hours. Tomorrow, the massive V12 engine will again belch a column of bluish smoke. The mangled steel carcass will again crawl stubbornly toward the enemy guns. All the imagined heroism was left far behind. Ahead lies only endless, filthy, unbearably hard and bloody work. This battle will never be printed in the pages of school history textbooks. The fight in the narrow stone gorge will not become a textbook example of a perfect ambush. Generals will not write detailed analyses of it in their memoirs. The bloodbath at the nameless pass will forever remain just another difficult day of the Carpathian Uzhgorod offensive. Dry staff reports will swallow the human tragedy. Paper archives will hide the spilled blood, the scorched steel, and the savage pain of ruptured eardrums. The lists of irrecoverable losses will slowly yellow in dark cardboard folders. The nameless artillerymen simply did their back-breaking work. They survived where survival was mathematically impossible. They survived, repaired the shattered iron themselves, loaded new shells, and went on to kill again. The endless war indifferently chewed up their personal pain and issued the command. Dry statistics of destroyed targets. The former math teacher will meet the victory very far from these cursed Carpathian crags. He will reach the end of this long, bloody road, but he will pay a terrible price for survival. The severe blast trauma will forever leave an indelible mark on his body. Silver strands will cover his temples. His right ear will irrevocably lose its hearing, leaving a dead, crushing silence on one side, and the foul, high-pitched whistle of a torn eardrum on the other. The brutal physiology of war will change him forever. His traumatized psyche will hide the scars, deep beneath the restrained shell of an ordinary, quiet man. He will eventually take off the heavy officer's coat, permeated with the smell of cordite and diesel. He will turn in his worn holster and put on a simple civilian suit. Leaning heavily on a wooden cane, he will return to his old school. He will stand again at the smooth blackboard, firmly gripping a piece of white chalk in his mangled hand. In a hollow, steady voice, he will explain the laws of geometry to new students. He will methodically write complex algebraic equations, teaching children the strict rules of mathematics, rules that are independent of physical pain, animal fear, or sudden death. A piece of chalk weighs almost nothing, but his hand constantly trembles from the phantom weight of a 95-pound shell. He will never tell these children the truth about that icy day in the autumn of 1944. He will not describe the acrid, toxic smell of burning copper wiring inside a scorching 46-ton assault gun. He will remain silent about how the blinded driver howled from the savage pain,
clawing with filthy fingernails at the red-hot scale in his ruined eyes. The teacher will hide his sticky rage from them, the primal rage that forced him to cold-bloodedly kill other people's sons in vengeance for his own child, who had burned alive in a tank. The filthy truth of the trenches is not meant for children's minds. It would instantly crush their faith in justice. The memory of his personal vendetta will dissolve, vanishing into the colossal history of the great victory. Millions of mangled lives will merge into one nameless foundation for the peaceful life that followed. The country will celebrate its triumph with fireworks and solemn songs, and the former artillery commander will sit silently by a clean window, leaning on his wooden cane, looking at the cloudless sky with infinitely tired eyes. He will breathe slowly. But a severe brain injury does not pass without a trace. From time to time, the peaceful reality will abruptly vanish. Suddenly, that cold October dawn returns. The nauseating stench of burnt diesel returns. The icy cold of the thick armor returns. His fingers again convulsively grip the freezing hand wheels of the laying mechanisms. The paralyzing horror returns as an enemy armor-piercing shell flies straight into the frontal plate. A monstrous kinetic impact occurs. The deafening ring of shattered metal strikes the eardrums brutally. This unbearable acoustic blow hits the frayed nerves again, cutting off his breath and making him instinctively tuck his gray head into his shoulders. A high-pitched metallic whistle fills his consciousness. His heart hammers wildly against his ribs, but this terrifying, paralyzing ring suddenly cuts off. The monstrous roar of the cannon shot is abruptly replaced by a different sound wave. The roar transitions into a piercing, high-pitched trill. The sharp ring of an ordinary school bell suddenly cuts through the silence of the bright hallway. The math lesson is over. Children with loud, joyful laughter run out of the classroom, jostling each other in the open doors. The endless war is finally over. The former commander of the heavy, self-propelled mount exhales with a heavy sigh. He takes a damp rag and methodically erases the perfect formulas from the board. The hard chalk crumbles into fine dust, a dry, white dust that looks so much like the stone grit of the shattered Carpathian crags. The classroom empties quickly. Silence falls. Absolute, deep, unbreakable silence.